Hi, I'm Kathy and this is Bishopstone Yarns. This is episode 3 of the Bishopstone Yarns podcast. This podcast is mainly about knitting, spinning, a little bit of weaving and any other type of fibre or other related crafts that might take my fancy. So at the moment you can find me as Bishopstone Yarns on Instagram. You can find me as Bishopstone Yarns on Facebook, and on Ravelry you can find me as Bishopstone. Now most of my projects, my jumpers that I've knitted, you can find a link to those on Ravelry, and where I've written up some of the information about needles and yarn that I've used. And so if I forget some of the information here, then you can always find it on my Ravelry page. And of course you can find me here on YouTube as well. So if you like the podcast, give me the kind of thumbs up, and subscribe if you like the channel. And yeah, it's really nice to be here with you. If you're a returning viewer, hi, it's really nice to see you again. And if you're a new viewer, welcome. And I hope you enjoy the podcast. Now today, I thought I might talk mainly just about some of my hand knit jumpers that I've made, and then in next episode I'll go through my works in progress and give you a little update on those. But because yesterday was Valentine's Day, I thought I would get out a few of my favourite hand knitted tops and share those with you. Now, starting off here with this jacket here, which is the knitted yoked cardigan, and which I talked about in the last episode. Now I realise last time this one was on the mannequin behind me and you couldn't see the buttons very well, so I wanted to show you. I've put my red buttons on, decided to go with the red, and actually I'm really happy with them. I really like the red, I like the contrast, and I'm really looking forward to the weather getting a little bit cooler so I can wear this. I mean, I live in Tasmania, which is the little island to the south of Australia. So of course we're in the middle of summer at the moment, and the weather has been really warm, really lovely lately. We haven't had much rain where we are. We're all on tank water where we are, so of course we're always happy for a little bit of rain, and especially the garden would love some rain at the moment. And this time of the year, the lawn at the back, of course, kind of dries off, and there's not really much greenery there. There's still some greenery in the garden, but yes, it's a little bit warm for wearing this cardigan at the moment, even though I think it might be coming to be one of my most favourite wears, even though I've only kind of been wearing it for short periods of time at the moment. It's very soft, and as I was saying in the last episode, this has been knitted from the sheep that we used to have, and so it is very soft. It's very cozy. It's a really, really nice cozy top, and yeah, I'm just really, really happy with it. I love this collar. It's a kind of a double collar, and I just love everything about this. So yes, not that I'm hoping for winter to come too quickly, but yes, I will be enjoying this one a lot as the weather gets cooler. Now, the other thing I was going to talk about was I was going to show you another one of my hand knitted jumpers that I really love. This one I've also talked about in the last episode. This was Seachange by Jennifer Steingass, and last time I talked about how the pattern in the yoke didn't show up quite as well as the previous jumper in this design that I had knitted. And I talked a little bit about the yarn and why that might be. I guess if you can kind of, if I show it up a little bit closer, you can see the design. It shows off a lot better in the darker colour here, and not quite so well when the purple is kind of lighter down here. This jumper is also from some of my earlier spinning, and so it's not, the spinning itself is not as even, it's not as smooth as maybe some of the spinning I might do now, and because of those reasons, and a few other reasons which I won't go into now, but I mean, it did make it a little bit harder to be able to see the design in the yoke on this one. I still like it a lot. I love the colours. I mean, this one was knitted for my son, and so these were the colours that he was interested in, and I just grabbed them out because these were some in my stash and they'd been sitting around for a long time, and I really just wanted to use them up, not giving a great deal of thought about the type of yarn that I was going to use and which would be best for putting in a yoke. I have, just by contrast, I have done a hand-spun yoked jumper before. I made one for my daughter, and this, if I can get it there without the glare, so this was one that I made for my daughter, and of course I don't have the jumper anymore, it's with my daughter, and so this was hand spun. It was commercially dyed tops. I think it was an Australian commercial kind of tops that were, I just spun up and then chose a pattern and knitted them up for her. It was a much smoother yarn. When I spun it, it was a lot smoother, it was a lot more even. I think the colour gradients as well helped to show up the pattern a lot better. And so I just wanted to make sure that people didn't think that hand spun doesn't show up patterns, because it does, and it can show them up really well. It's just that in my daughter's jumper, I had planned that out, thought about it for a lot longer, decided the type of yarn I wanted to spin for that, which was appropriate for showing off a lovely pattern, as opposed to my son's jumper, which I really was just trying to use up what I had in my stash. Hadn't really stopped to think about, gosh, is this going to show off the pattern as well as it could? And so they're the little things that, especially with hand spun, you need to think about, because there are so many different types of spun yarns that you can do. And that's probably worth a whole different video and episode to go into all the discussions about woolen and worsted, kind of like your smooth yarns, 2 plies, or kind of having more than 2 singles put together, the type of a round yarn or a flatter yarn, all makes a difference to the project that you're going to make and how it's going to look in the end. And sometimes you plan that through and it works out really well, and other times I've just spun up yarn and then decided, just want to knit something and use it, and I don't really mind. As long as I'm happy with the outcome, then that's all that really matters. So I think one of those projects is a little bit like this one here that I've got. So I had dyed up, this was also from the sheep that we used to have, this wool, so it's a merino, they were all merino crosses. So to start with, their wool is absolutely lovely and soft, and it just kind of a delight to work with, really. So what I had done was I had dyed up almost, I think, probably a whole fleece in reds and pinks and similar kind of shades. I might kind of show you up a little bit closer here. And then we also had a brown sheep, And so I had added a single of the brown with the red to get this kind of colour away. And so I ended up, because I had dyed up probably the whole fleece in these reds and pinks, I ended up with quite a lot of this yarn. And this is just some of that that's left over. This was spun up, it was a lot, quite a thick yarn. And then I just decided I would just knit a top down all-in-one jumper. So I started here at the top, decided I wanted to a V-neck, and then just continued down, knitting down, and then I added the sleeves on later, the raglan sleeves, kind of increases here, and added on the sleeves. So I had a few different skeins here. As you can see, there's one different colourway here, there's a different colourway here, and a different one at the bottom. So I thought they all kind of went quite well together. They added a little bit of interest by the changing of the colours, so it didn't matter that it was a plain knit jumper. And at the end I decided I wasn't going to put a collar on because I quite liked the look just of the open collar here, and it sits quite nicely on me. I quite like the look of that. This is another really warm winter jumper. It's not one that I could wear at the moment, but it's great. It's a great jumper for colder days and for slightly windy cold days, because I've knitted this quite a tight fabric, so it's quite dense, and so therefore the wind doesn't really kind of go through it, so it keeps you very warm. And so that was something that I just one of those knits where you kind of I already had the yarn, just wanted to make something from it, and started and went and created the jumper afterwards. So it wasn't as if I was deciding when I started spinning what I was going to make with the yarn. I was just spinning because I had all this lovely, wonderful dyed up fleece and a brown fleece as well to get through. Now, one of the other jumpers or cardigans that I made, which was also a top down one, which didn't have a pattern either. So this one didn't have a pattern, I just knitted that from the top down. Same with this one. So this one here, as you can see, I had a fleece and I just dyed it, I think it was called Dusty Pink, or Dusk, maybe something like that. And then I just spun it up as it came. So gave me this nice variations because of the way I spun it. I tried to spin, some of the lighter with the dark. And if I can come in a little bit closer, you can just see a little bit of detail here in the back. And then at the bottom, I just put in a little bit of a lacy pattern here at the bottom as well, just to add a little bit of interest, I guess. Now this one doesn't have buttons, it's just held together. I usually wear just like a little brooch or a clasp here to hold it together, and that is a really nice lightweight summery top. As you can see, I quite like doing the top down. I like being able to knit all in one piece and not having to worry about seaming up as much. So I do have a little button band on here, so I could put buttons on if I wanted to, but with a little, you can see, a little picot edge here on it. Now this one also I had fleece and had, see if I can get it to There we go. So I had dyed up almost the entire fleece in this colourway, and this is kind of a much finer yarn, as you can see. So I had quite a lot of this, if you can imagine, from a fleece, and I sold quite a lot of it. And then I had still had a bit left over, so that's why I decided to make the cardigan for myself. And then I still ended up with a skein like this, which I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'm sure I will find a project for it later. But yes, quite good at dyeing up large batches now. I must admit, when I first started spinning and dyeing, quite often I would get a small amount, put it in, dye it, and then I'd end up with one skein of one colour, one skein of another colour, which is a little bit like this cardigan here, this jacket here, because I had kept these for such a long time because I didn't have enough really to knit an entire jumper or a cardigan from, and so they'd sat there for a long time before I suddenly decided I might as well just put them all together and put them in a striped pattern. And so that was the problem at the beginning when I started dyeing. You get so excited about all the different colours and all the different possibilities, and then you come to a point where there's only so many hats or short scarves or mittens or gloves that you can knit to use up your one skeins. And not all skeins go together as well in colour-wise, as well as this jacket did. But yeah, no, this one worked really well. But I have now learnt to dye enough so that you can knit a decent sized project from. Sometimes I have gone a little bit overboard, as in with the red I did make probably enough for 2 jumper lots when I did this, but that's okay, better to have too much than not enough. And then one of the other jumpers that I have made and was part of my Valentine's love was this one here. Now this one is also a top-down design, all in one, with raglan sleeves, and as you can see for the design here, so you knit all the way down until you kind of separate here for the sleeves in the body, and then you go down and then come back and do the arms afterwards. So as you can see with that, there's 2 different colorways here. The sleeves have been knitted with a slightly more green and pink, and the body is much more of a yellow and pink, and then the other side we come back to the green and the pink. And this one was actually is actually an alpaca and wool mix. So the wool, of course, has come from our sheep, and the alpaca was a local Tasmanian alpaca fleece that I had spun up. It's a lot woollier, well, got a lot more halo to it because of the alpaca, which is really lovely. But the alpaca as well was, the fleece that I had was quite a short staple. So instead of having a nice long staple, the wool had a longer staple, and the alpaca was quite a short staple. And so in that way, it does peel a little bit more than, say, just something like this wool jumper. But that's only because the alpaca was really quite a short staple. And I mean, I don't mind spinning that. I don't mind spinning something with a slightly shorter staple. But it does mean that it just wears slightly differently. It's a lot lighter. Not that you can kind of feel that, but it is a lot lighter and very warm because of the alpaca in it. So the alpaca does make it quite nice and warm. Now I think I had used up all or most of this kind of colour. I do have a similar. I do have quite a similar ball left. It's not exactly the same colourway, but this is also an alpaca and wool kind of mix. And this is a kind of quite a similar. I think this one's maybe has a little bit more. Oh, if we can get it to focus at all. Maybe. Yeah. So you can see there, I guess if I put it against something dark, you can see the halo there on the yarn, which is the alpaca fibres kind of, yeah. But it does make for a really, really nice yarn, and one that's also lovely to wear. Well, I think that's enough on these ones here at the moment. I've talked a little bit about my hand spun, and the other thing I'll quickly talk about is just here behind me on this mannequin over here is a jumper that I'll talk about next time. This is a jumper that I made a long time ago, close to 30 years ago, and I just find I don't wear it anymore. So I will have a little talk about that and my thoughts about what I'm going to do with that jumper to try and make it so that I can wear it again. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. I hope you've enjoyed looking at some of my hand knitted jumpers, some of my wool love, something to keep you nice and warm for years to come, which is what love is all about, isn't it, really, in this Valentine's time. Yes, so I hope everyone had a lovely Valentine's Day, and I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Bye.